I just love that they both agreed that they would not work on the Stones project unless the other person was present in the room. So it was a real collaborative work. Frank O'Hara provided the words and Larry Rivers provided the drawings. And I feel like that's mirrored in the way that we work. I do the harp compositions and he does the pedal effects, but we both cross over, we both collaborate, we share.
All right, welcome back to In a Rhythm. My name is Mae from the Pollock-Krasner house and I'm filling in for Matt today. And we have such a special guest, a returning guest to the podcast, our very first musician in residence, Emily. And Russ, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to sit down with you guys and pick your brain about the artistic process today and talk about this beautiful album, Stone, which culminated through your time here. So thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
So the central kind of communicator of this album is the harp instrument, which is your formal training and career. So take me back first to your upbringing with the harp and how it's evolved as your kind of mode of storytelling.
Yeah, so I started playing the harp when I was 8 years old. And you know, I'm classically trained, so for a long, long time I was just playing purely classical music, exactly what was written on the sheet music, just, you know, the way that the composer intended. And for a while, I didn't know what I had to say. You know, I was always playing other people's compositions, and I didn't have any confidence in myself as a composer, as a improvisationalist. I was not comfortable with improv at all when I was younger. So that kind of developed over time. I went to music school, and then when I graduated, I started doing freelance weddings around Long Island, started playing gigs, and that was great for a time. But then I said, like, what's my artist voice sound like? Like, what do I want to play? So then I discovered this whole incredible world of pedal effects. So it's technology that I can mix with the harp signal to process the harp in different ways. And I met Russ, who is an expert at pedal effects. And together we started this YouTube channel, which is a resource for other harpists, musicians, enthusiasts of different sound, just as kind of a resource for other people who were interested in what the harp could sound like and kind of sonic exploration. And we started that YouTube channel in 2019. And over time, I got super comfortable with improvisation just because of the nature of what we were doing. We were testing out pedal effects, we were testing out music technology, and I couldn't play copyright music because in our videos, I didn't want to be playing other people's compositions. So in the beginning, I kind of started out, you know, with not so great compositions, but I think it's important to still, you know, that time was still valid because you have to be bad at something before you can be good at something. So over time, I just got better at improv. And then I discovered that my voice and what I like to play on the harp was these improvisations that capture a mood, capture a feeling, kind of short sketches that are mixed with pedal effects. So different kinds of effects such as reverb, delay, distortion sometimes, but it can get a little tricky. Yeah, and so I would say that my journey has led me here, which is a very unexpected place, but now we both work as composers, we both work as YouTubers, we work on movie soundtracks, we work on video game soundtracks, so we work on all these amazing projects, and we are the composers now. So that's kind of a big shift from when I started, when I said, oh, I didn't go to school for composition, I just went to, you know, I got my degree in music performance. So now being where we're at and making our own music, having our own style is really something that I'm quite proud of.
It's just the coolest thing because I also admittedly, when I met you, I had no idea kind of the limitations the harp has found itself in historically and kind of my own misconceptions about it, just kind of compartmentalizing it for classical music with a large orchestra, kind of a cosmopolitan luxury.
Yeah.
But your work has kind of broken every glass ceiling in that realm. It's just purely experimental and you're making the harp fun and less daunting in a way.
Thank you
Even
so
though
much.
the instrument's probably like taller than me.
It's taller than me, yeah.
But it's such experimentation in form and production. And I feel like albums such as Stone really transform my perspective on that. So you're just doing something so cool.
Thank you so much. And that was our goal with this album, because every sound that you hear on this album is the harp processed in various ways. There's no synthesizer, there's no guitar, there's no keyboard. It's just harp processed through various pieces of music technology. So our goal with this album was kind of to push the limits of the harp, but still retain the quality of the instrument. Still recognizable as, oh, that's a harp as the source instrument, but going down all these different pathways and taking it in places that are kind of unexpected, because like you said, a lot of people just consider it a purely classical instrument. In the orchestra, when they do the nice glissando, then they do, you know, there's a joke among harpists that you wait so many measures. When you're in the orchestra, it's all silence, and then there's one measure where you finally play a chord, and then you wait again for 60 measures again. So yeah, we're trying to change the perspective of the instrument, because a lot of people have that image of the harp in their mind, of just, you know, the performer in the ball gown in a beautiful regal setting, and something magical about it. But we're trying to change that, and I think we've changed it. Yeah. I think we're getting there slowly. Yeah.
Now, we met back in June 2024. It was like one of my first intern responsibilities. I had to pick you up in a car.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
And I remember being a part of one of your first walkthroughs of the Pollock-Krasner house. And what a special moment it was to see you encounter the lithograph we have here that Lee Krasner did in memorial to Frank O'Hara at his exhibition honoring poetry from In Memory of My Feelings. And it's kind of, the poem is embedded in the work, and then Lee designed the litho around it.
I could not believe, when I saw it, I got so excited.
And I remember you saying, this is Frank O'Hara, he's my favorite poet. And like, little did I know what that would mean for the rest of your residency here.
I didn't even know what that meant when I said it.
I don't even fully remember what my response was, but I think I remember saying something along the lines of like, oh yeah, he's buried with Lee. Like, they had such a special friendship. They're both at Green River Cemetery now. And kind of just talk about your admiration for Frank O'Hara, because that happened to be one of my first impressions of you.
Which is accurate,
kind of totally coincidentally. And how you kind of then found your way narrowed down to stones and kind of deep dive into Frank and Larry's relationship. How did you find yourself in that?
So it's been a really interesting pathway to reach this point. I could not believe the link between Frank O'Hara and Lee Krasner. I didn't know that they were even friends. And we were doing research at the MoMA, and I found correspondence between Frank O'Hara and Lee. And I got so excited. I'm like, they're friends. Wow, this is a connection. And we were really interested in the way that Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner worked, because they lived together, they were partners, but they had an interesting way of working together because they didn't collaborate, and they each had to ask the other person for permission before entering the creative space, which is a complete contrast to the way that we work as partners, because we work in the same studio where all of our work is collaborative. So that really struck me, and that I found that really interesting. So I was exploring this link with Lee and Frank, and he's buried at the Green River Cemetery with Jackson and Lee, and it just was so interesting. I was doing more research, and we found a section in a book that was talking about stones, this project, and it was in the late 1950s, and it was with Larry Rivers and Frank O'Hara, and I felt that this was a collaboration that was often overlooked, because Frank O'Hara has been a huge inspiration for me ever since my college days. Having a Coke with You is one of his most famous poems. Mm-hmm. Absolutely amazing. I love how he speaks about like the present moment. I love that he captures kind of in his writing like a mood or like an experience. It feels like he's a friend talking to you. He's very personal. And I just love the way he writes. And so when I discovered this Stones work, I was like, oh, I got to see it, because I love Frank and I don't know what this is. So we went and looked at it, and two things struck me in particular. The first was that this work was created at ULAE. Its origins happened at ULAE, which is this amazing organization on Long Island. And furthermore, it's in my hometown, the place where I grew up. So that was a weird connection that already I was like, oh, that's kind of amazing. And then secondly, I just love that they both agreed that they would not work on the Stones project unless the other person was present in the room. So it was a real collaborative work. They both worked on the Stones. Frank O'Hara provided the words and Larry Rivers provided the drawings. And I feel like that's mirrored in the way that we work, because, primarily I do the harp compositions and he does the pedal effects, but we both cross over, we both collaborate, we share. He helps me with the harp compositions and I help him with choosing the pedal effects and what goes where and how it sounds. So I really saw myself and Russ reflected in this work. And I thought it was perfect.
And it was really interesting that it was such a contrast to how Lee and Jackson worked together. But at the same time, they were obviously close to one another.
Yeah.
So these kind of two very different artistic processes existing juxtaposed was really interesting to us. And we're always interested in process. And you know, before we were full-time musicians, I was an architect for 10 years, and I was a musician throughout, being an architect as well. And I just like remember, like the beginning of when I understood that there were certain things in my brain that worked the same way as when I was designing a building, as when I was making music. And you know, not enough people in my life had talked about how creative process can transcend through medium, right? You talk about getting a skill as a painter or an artist, or you know, cultivating a skill as a musician, but you don't talk about the process of creating in different mediums, how they can overlap and how those kind of same brain muscles can be used. So we have always been interested in kind of this idea of process. So the Stones' work had resonated with us so much because it spoke to how we worked.
And I think this collaboration is so fascinating because Stones is one of the final kind of pieces or projects of Frank's life. Did that kind of play a role in your selection? Just kind of thinking about him as like how you admired him so much?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know if that factored in actually. Because I know it was one of his last works before he passed. I was interested in how Larry must have felt after Frank had passed, because they had this beautiful work and it was up to Larry to kind of take it and publish it. And I remember, it's really interesting, there's one work, Birdie, that actually changed after Frank had passed. So Larry went back and he changed.
It seemed, I don't know the
He made an
details.
adjustment, and the details are not super clear, but there are two different versions of that work in particular, where the one that we were the one that we referenced for our album, had kind of a blank space in the shape of a woman. And then when we saw the stone that is here at the house, it's filled in. There's a woman there. Birdie appears, and it's really funny because I asked ULAE about this, and they had said that, oh, we think that Larry came back and after Frank had passed and added some. He might have wanted to add a little detail after the fact, but as far as I know, that's the only difference that changed. I'm also kind of upset about that because they're supposed to work on it together, but that's neither here nor there. They promised, but yeah, I don't know if that actually factored into me choosing it. I just knew that it was a work that I had not been familiar with, and I think it's important to talk about. It's like the poem. He said, this is why I'm telling you about this. It's important. It's a moment. It's a beautiful work, and I just think it deserves to have its moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine that sadness. I know Larry was one of the 2 or 3 people that actually gave a eulogy at Frank O'Hara's burial.
It was a complicated eulogy, right? It was really interesting.
So many feelings. So perhaps, oh God, I can't make any assumptions, but like motivations of going and changing something about Birdie.
Yeah.
In the wake of all of that emotions.
I know.
And all of those emotions.
There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to process there.
Oh, surely. Definitely. So what is it kind of like to base an album off of kind of a soul inspiration? Would it be considered like an interpretation or purely admiration? Because Stones is something that's incredibly tangible, not only in its own artistic process, but within kind of 2 people coming together. And the lithographs themselves. And I'd love to kind of dive into this concept because Lee Krasner believed that her work was inherently, undeniably autobiographical and an extension of her subconscious and her emotions. And I think for Frank O'Hara's poetry, his observations are what is kind of that purely, undeniably autobiographical component. So while listening to Stone, I kind of had this realization that these 2 concepts can happen simultaneously and in a sense kind of collaborate together. Mm-hmm. So I just would love to get your thoughts on that and how you kind of felt like how do you go from inspiration to kind of interpretation, out of admiration, kind of where do those thoughts kind of compartmentalize for you?
Yeah, that's, so let me think about this, because we compose for films and animation. So our job normally is to add music to picture. But this is the first time that I've had to take a picture and interpret the music that would go along with it. Like, what does this image represent to me? What does it feel like?
Yeah, it's not necessarily writing a soundtrack to it.
It's very different.
It's kind of like extracting elements from it that we think have an interesting musical value. And maybe it can be seen as a companion, it can be seen as a standalone thing, but it's really...
What's the voice of it?
It's really an interpretation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So all the works that you'll hear, all the tracks that you'll hear on Stone are our interpretations of what we felt
each stone
each
was
stone
kind of doing,
was saying,
what it meant, and there are different there are different ways we had done it for each one.
Can I grab the album to show it now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the other side of you.
Okay, so yeah, this is the album, just as a prop.
So some of them kind of leaned into abstract musical concepts that mirrored some things that were happening. Some of them were more painting a setting, a narrative, a mood, that kind of we thought captured the essence of what was either happening or what we interpreted to happen, or a beautiful moment in one of the stones. Some of
the tracks focus on like a line in the stone, or like focus more on a particular part. So there's a booklet included in this, and for each stone, there's a little paragraph that we wrote, kind of describing what our thoughts were, what direction we went in with each work. But yeah, it was such an interesting project because I've never had to do that before, and it was really, it was challenging in a really, really fun way.
And it's one song per stone, so there's 12 stones. 12 songs. Yeah,
and the way we worked for it was mostly improvisational, quasi-improvisational, I would say, and then we worked together to choose the effects.
Because we kind of went back and forth on what
does
it mean that the harp, what is the harp doing, and she would do some improvisation, and we would kind of have a discussion, and I would make some space in the, I would kind of cut it up a little bit and move it around a little bit, and we would talk, and what does this mean? Maybe we change this note here, maybe we leave space here for this, and then we both chose the effect processing and how that worked, and how,
What's really interesting about this is that although every sound is coming from the source instrument of the harp, you would not be able to replicate what we did on this album in a live setting. So there's a mix of fantastical elements in it. There's a mix of just pure harp sound. So I really like that mix. And there's one track in particular we could talk about was my favorite, I think.
I believe it's called Love.
Yeah, it's called Love. And it's a mix of two harps. So I played twice on two different tracks. And we had a really great discussion with that too.
Yeah, so there's two harps, and she played once and left enough space for another one to exist, and then filled in that space, and then we panned them. One ear is one harp, one ear is the other harp, if you were to have headphones in the stereo field. And then we processed them both through the same kind of reverberation.
And I love this. I love that both harps are going through the same piece of music technology.
And this stone was, it kind of got us talking about what love is as kind of a force between two elements. So we kind of used those two harps as the element, but we sent them both through the same processing at the same time. And the idea was that these harp pieces are very real. There's something that can exist in the real world. And typically when you would think of a reverb, you would think of something that would come from a natural space, like a cathedral, or a concert hall, right? But there are these,
those are naturally occurring reverbs.
Reverbs. But there are these algorithms that can create these more fantastical sounds that can't exist in reality, that are less tangibly, just less able to be perceived in reality. And so we ran it through this kind of really spacey, swelly reverse reverb. And we sent them both through this at the same time. So they kind of melded together in this kind of beautiful, fantastical way. And it kind of speaks of the idea that there are two kind of very real, tangible people, but there's this intangible, imaginary, unseeable, unperceivable connection between them that brings them together in a way that is not of this world.
Yeah, and reverse reverb can't happen naturally. You can't go to a space and achieve that. So that's why I love that we chose that.
Yeah, we wanted to lean into something really fantastical.
Yeah.
That kind of blends these two elements together. And that's the only track where there are two harps.
Yeah, that's the only track
yeah,
where there's two harps. So.
Oh my God, I kind of have chills.
Yeah.
Because it's such a bond, because, you know, friendships perhaps happen so naturally by design. You know, you get along with someone and you can create art together and you can collaborate together. But kind of what you're saying here, kind of tapping into that fanatical, is that you're designing this bond. So I think the way that you kind of claim it to be an interpretation is so wonderful, because you get both elements, and very much an autobiographical sense, but then also an observational sense, and then a fantastical sense. You have all of these elements kind of coming together. And that's why this album is like so magical.
Before we move on to the next question, can we just talk about one more track? Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Just in contrast to that love track we were talking about before,
You're gonna talk about Bullets?
we're going to talk about entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to talk about all. I gotta.
Bullets
okay.
was one of my favorites though, because it's kind of, it was number 4, and you know, you have all these like beautiful, lovely sonic sounds, like kind of an elegance, but then kind of entertainment factor, and then you hear Bullets and you're just kind of like,
Okay.
whoa.
Okay. Wait.
This
I think
is totally
is it-
different.
Bullets was the
I think
most.
it's a third
it's
one
a
on
third
track. It
one,
doesn't,
yeah.
but
Oh,
it doesn't matter.
okay.
It's fine. It's on there.
Bullets was the most. Bullets was the one that we
Bullets
had the
was
most trouble
crazy.
with. I think.
Yeah, I really struggled with that, because you look at all the other works in Stones, and you, I don't know, you're
they can
immediately
be-
kind of struck
they
by a
can be
feeling, a
melancholy,
mood.
yeah.
They're easier for me to interpret. And we looked at Bullets, and I went, uh-oh.
It's like visceral.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of the pint of blood.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and it's very like, I don't know, like it's very body, like in your
Yeah.
body, and it's
Yeah.
very like,
such like a graphic feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah.
It felt so different, and
very different.
we kind of like were going through all of the tracks, and we did it once, and we were like, okay, and then we went back to it, and we're like, oh, let's do it again. And we kept,
Then
we kept kind of redoing it a
we
couple
kind of
times.
redid that one, because our first one in the series didn't quite fit. It was too jarring, remember?
Yeah.
And we said, how do we make this fit in the series? I'm glad that you had that experience of it being like, whoa, it's different, because we wanted it to be different, but we didn't want it to be like, oh, this is so dark and doesn't fit, because I think the first one we did was very dark,
Yeah.
and I still wanted to have that
Yeah. And a lot
kind
of
of like melancholy mood. Yeah.
but still kind of like feeling a little more hopeless.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. And
That was tough.
If it was hard to kind of capture what we thought would be best to do.
We went with the
while-
boiling
yeah,
effect.
yeah.
Yeah, to talk about that.
It was kind of difficult to capture what like we thought would be best to do with it, but also have it kind of fit sonically within the rest of the record as well. So we used a lot of filtering to kind of make the harp feel like, in a way where it's like it's boiling. It's at its boiling point, and it's kind
very
of
like
this
bubbly
like,
and kind
yeah,
of tension. Yeah.
This very like, you know, kind of disgusting thing
Yeah.
that existed, and it was breaking down and decomposing and.
But it was in the midst of something beautiful
Yeah,
too, because they were
exactly.
together. So it's, and again, it's up to interpretation. But when I saw that work, I felt a mood shift.
Yeah.
Um,
Almost apocalyptic.
yeah, almost
Certainly, yeah.
apocalyptic. And I didn't want, you know, when you're making an album and you're starting fresh on a track, it could go any way. It could be it could be like a dissonant mess of notes of sound, and I still want it to be pleasant to listen to. So that's what also was important to me, was that this track has to fit into the series and also like not sound so out of place, fit in with everything else. So
Yeah, and then there were other ones like there was Birdie.
yeah, the one we spoke about. Hmm.
I think. Hold on, I'm not sure what it's actually called.
That's
on the
Light of
record.
Loss.
Light of Loss.
Mhm.
Okay, so on.
Wait, I think so.
Yeah.
Light of Loss. Yeah,
Because the
okay.
quote. Yeah, because on Light of Loss, like, so the whole record is this, you know, very processed, very kind of mangled harp in kind of beautiful and painful ways. But this kind of, this track, we decided it would be naked. It would be just the harp as kind of a palate
Unprocessed.
cleanser, as a reference point to understand the source that we are modifying here, and something kind of towards the center of the album that acts as not an interlude, but this palate cleanser is the best way to put it. And we were looking at the original work,
Where there's a missing shape.
where there's a missing shape and there's kind of this silhouette of like it looks like a naked woman, and we were kind of like, well, what does it mean to be naked, you know?
And a lot, so when we work on the stone too, a lot of it's up to our interpretation, of course, but I like to know some context behind it. And for some of the works, it was very difficult to find context behind it because this is such a, it's a work that is not often talked about. So I did my research and we found something really interesting where they were speaking about Birdie, and Birdie is actually Larry Rivers' mother-in-law. And it was said that she didn't have an ego, that she was very down to earth, very pleasant person. And I love that. It's just like a pure soul. And so I took that into account as well. Like, what does it mean to reveal yourself to someone in a non-egotistical way, and just here it is. And so we thought that
in the context of the rest
harp,
of the
in the context
record,
of it,
it was just really great to kind of show it bare for a number of reasons. And it was very interesting that is the one that changed.
Yeah, that did change.
The one,
we still process the harmonics, so we process these bits of sound, these little flourishes.
Intermittently, kind of to
but
kind of remind you of that
source,
contrast.
Yeah, the main source is just unprocessed harp, which we don't often do.
No. And then moving away from that abstract kind of concept, like in the track Entertainment, that stone was really interesting because it was this illustration of an intimate moment in seemingly in a small apartment with two people. And that was one where we kind of understood that it made sense to kind of try to capture the feeling, the atmosphere, what was happening, what it might have sounded like
in the room.
There. So we kind of ran the harp through kind of like low fidelity, like a dictaphone simulator, and but then we made it fantastical, and then we made it beautiful, like otherworldly, as other two people would experience together in an intimate setting. So melding those elements together became a little bit more literal than a lot of the other tracks, but there's just a big mix of like abstract concepts, settings, and just like moods. Yeah.
It's so cool because even though you guys explore all these different moods or all these different realities, there's still such a candidness about every song. The song puts everything on their table. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing kind of masking behind these songs. It's just so sonic. It's just how you feel in that moment, and that's what this album brings together. So through this artistic process, has Stone kind of redefined collaboration for you in any way, through both the research and the inspirations to kind of how you guys collaborated together?
Yeah, you go first.
I think it helped us understand our role and our collaboration further. I think it helped solidify a lot more of what we did, because it was just truly wonderful to have the resources and the time to really lean into this project and to just really, use it as an opportunity to like understand ourselves as collaborative partners.
I am a collaborative artist, and what's really amazing about this whole process is that as part of my artist residency, I went to Stony Brook University, and I made a lithograph step by step with Loreno Salcedo Watson, and like this whole album artwork is hers, but it's also collaborative. So she made the decisions, and she worked on the big machine that presses the image onto the stone. It's incredible. But we had a workshop too where we invited students to come by and bring their favorite piece of sheet music and learn about the process of lithography. So even the album artwork was a collaboration. And that workshop was so incredible. So many students showed up, and it's amazing to share that moment with so many people, and because lithography also it can be seen as an antiquated art form.
Totally.
It's not often thought about. And the same thing with the harp. It can be seen as an antiquated art form. So I really thought there was a connection there too, and just the fact that my favorite Lee Krasner pieces have a lithography base on them, and her collage work is just so incredible. There's so many connections when you really look, and I just think, yeah, I think every part of this album is collaborative, but it still maintains my artist voice, which I'm really, really pleased with, because for a long time I didn't know what that was, and I think this whole process has solidified how I feel as an artist, and I know that something really beautiful comes out of collaborative work.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll hand this back to you.
Absolutely, and I love that full circle moment that is even explained a bit on the cover, because lithography was established for a practical use. It was made in kind of late 19th century when the height of classical music was in its moment with Mozart and Beethoven and Bach, and they needed a practical way to print sheet music super fast.
Yeah.
And to do mass amounts of quantity of it for consumption. And then kind of how you and Lee and this, generations later of artists said, no, we're going to use this for a beauty. We're going to use this for an artistic purpose rather than a practical one. But then even kind of looking at today with the workshop you had, you're blending those two purposes together. And I think that's very relevant to this album cover.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome that you and Lorraine did that.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of almost end on the booklet with the
Yes.
brief kind of commentary, and I know you spoke about it before, but after every song you just have, honestly, it's a couple sentences talking about kind of the harp's musicality and the motivations behind production, and essentially kind of what the listener may be hearing from the composition. So were these kind of your just personal notes, or like something you found in the margins upon researching, or you kind of would look at a stone or a piece of research and then think, okay, wait, maybe this sound just came to me somehow, and you kind of wrote it down?
Yeah.
Like, kind of, how did these find themselves from your head into the reader's hands? Because they almost feel so personal.
I'm so happy you said that, because that's what we were going for with that. Just our notes, and
It was a mixture of what our intentions were when we sought out, what we discovered when we started making sounds.
I love stream of consciousness, because that's why I love Franco Howard's work. It's his thoughts. He's there in the moment. So that's what we were trying to do, and also provide some context.
Yeah.
For
So
the
when we
pieces.
wrote them, I think it was a mixture of. It was a summarization of discussions we were having while we were kind of composing and processing the sounds. It was a mixture of, well, what does it sound like, and what is it doing, and how does it relate to the stone?
And what lines really speak to us? Because sometimes, if you see in the booklet, I just quote
Just one
the
sentence.
line from the stone that really resonated with me, and I loved it. And we could talk about the violinist piece, the violinist stone.
Amazing.
There's so many things to talk about, but I also want to speak about why we chose vinyl for this.
The record is vinyl only.
It's vinyl only, so not available on digital streaming, not available anywhere else, no CDs. And after the workshop at Stony Brook, I was asked, well, what do you want to do with your stone that you made now? Because you can keep it, or you can wipe it clean, and the students can use it. And of course, I was like, wipe it clean, because it's a beautiful stone. The students, I don't know how to grind the stone, so let me say that I didn't learn how to actually prepare the stone. They prepared it for me. But the surface is so smooth, and it's such a tactile experience pressing an image that it's just, the experience is actually unforgettable. So I'm very grateful for that. But after the stone was finished, I said, wipe it and please use it for other people. So our art print and our album cover no longer exists. The image no longer exists. And that speaks to the Stones exhibit, the Stones work, because the Stones were destroyed. They don't exist anymore. So they only exist.
Stones,
the original Stones are no longer with us. So we only have the prints.
And the best
it's really special.
The best interpretation. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
The best interpretation musically and in this current technological climate for music is to make something very tangible that is also pressed. Like very similar process in abstractly to the Stones is very tactile, and also getting rid of any repeatable traces of it, being the digital ones.
Yeah.
So this is purely a physical, release.
So I don't. We've never done that before either, because a lot of our music is available for streaming, for digital download, and I wanted this to stand out. I wanted this to be a little different.
It's cemented in the physical.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I
I
wanted you to be able to hold it in my hand and say, this is a piece that I created.
And this is the only way you can have it is to hold it in your hand.
Yeah,
It's really special.
right? Doesn't it feel good that you're
Yeah,
like, I created
yeah.
this and you hold it in your hand?
Yeah, and also what we do from day to day outside of this has been, very online.
Yeah,
And
we're usually
very,
online.
very present, very published, very algorithmically influenced, and it was just nice to kind of step away from that and make something that is not online. It's
Yeah.
very not online. So, yes.
You can only get
Yeah.
it not
Yeah.
online. And it's nice to just sit out here and look at the turkeys as well and talk with you because
Very not online. The performances are one of a kind. The stones, the lithos are one of a kind. So just like you guys.
thank you so much.
So I'm really excited to see you guys perform.
Thank you
And I
very
can't
much.
wait.
Thanks
And it's
for
such
having
a
us.
when you're talking about the stone and kind of the making of it in the workshop, I've also been around lithos before and those limestones, and it's an extremely physical job. I think people
Yes.
kind of have this misconception that you're just kind of using the wax and with the water and just kind of letting that reaction create its own drawing. But no, like you're putting your arm in there, you're putting your whole body. And it reminds me so much of when I watched you last year play the harp. I think people also have this misconception that it's really just kind of your fingers doing all this graceful work, but no, like you have your whole body. It is what a physical experience. It looks so physically demanding and you make it look so effortless.
Well, thank
and,
you so
beautiful.
much. I'm secretly sweating as I play,
I know.
so I appreciate that it looks graceful because no, but I remember rolling the big rolling pin onto the ink, and I got very tired. I was like, I was sore the next day when
And
rolling the
constantly
ink.
greasing and
and pressing and cranking the wheel for the machine. Yeah, and both lithography and harp playing, they're physical. It involves contact, whether it's the flesh on the string or the stone and the paper, and there's a lot of tension. Both on the harp too. There's 2,000 pounds of pressure on the harp at all times with the strings. So, they're both very physical. Again, seemingly antiquated methods of creating art, and I just love the link now. I love that there's a link between them. Mm-hmm. But I love that you said it looks graceful. And if it looks graceful, then I'm doing it correctly. Okay. So thank you so much. But behind the scenes, I'm sweating, right? In the studio, I'm I'm tired.
I would say so. Yeah.
Alrighty, that's all I had, Bill. Thank you
Thank
guys
you
so
so
much.
Thank you.